Hello everybody, it's Kara from Wild Book Garden, and today I'm here to finally wrap up my next round of 5-star TBR predictions. I have finally read all 5 of the books. I will link the original video where I talked about them down below, and I'm just going to edit into the wrap-up section where I talk about the books, and then at the end I'm going to do a very brief sort of like reflection on how I did, and kind of how that has affected my interest in these authors going forward. And now on to the rating, ranking, and reviews. So in the 5th spot, we have Dreams Lie Beneath by Rebecca Ross. I did not dislike this book, but I was pretty disappointed in it because I was so sure that I was going to really love it. I've been talking about Rebecca Ross for ages as an author where I just had a feeling I was going to really love her books, and I still think I could. I just think that this one was not the perfect book of hers for me. That's what I'm hoping. So we are following our main character, Clementine. She goes by Clem for most of the book, which was not my favorite thing, but it's fine. And in this magical world, there are like nightmares or like dreams that like kind of terrorize the various like townspeople. And so every kind of village or community has, I think they're called like dream wardens or something like that. Yeah, wardens. And their job is to fight those dreams and those nightmares and protect everybody. And Clementine's father has been her village's warden for a long time now, and Clem has grown up wanting to be the next one. It's kind of been expected that she would succeed her father. And her father seems to be struggling to do the job now, and actually he's been struggling for a while, so Clem has been like stepping in more and more unbeknownst to the townspeople. To other wardens, or like a warden and apprentice or something, they show up in the town and basically challenge her to like a magician's duel for the right to be the warden of her community, and they win. And Clem is really upset about that, decides that she's going to get revenge and get her position back by like taking a position in this like young man's house. And he's of course the love interest, and then they of course end up spending more time together and having to actually work together. I don't know where else I was going with that. That's enough premise. Yeah, so like I just was very underwhelmed with this. I really thought I was gonna love the romance. It is hate to love, but I feel like it is frustrating hate to love. And you guys know, like, hate to love or enemies to lovers is a trope I love, but I think that it is hard to do really well. And in my opinion, this wasn't done super well. Like, it wasn't by any means like the worst that I've ever read, but it just, like, the banter between the two leads was like frustrating instead of like charming or interesting, and I just didn't find their interactions super engaging or romantic. I also feel like Clem's like motivation was a little, I don't know, it's like I wanted the romance to be a lot more slow burn. I also feel like the characterization of the love interest, like, it was, this is gonna sound weird, but it's almost like it was too much too quick, because like we had all these reasons for disliking him, and then we find out his backstory, and it's like such like an over-the-top version of like a, oh no, he's just misunderstood. I did like the writing well enough. Like, there were places where it felt clunky, or I was sort of like editing in my head because like the sentence was like almost perfect or something like that. But as a whole, I did think the writing was good. Like I said, I thought the concept was interesting. I really like stories that deal with like dreams or dream magic. And so that was one of the reasons I was interested in this one. Clementine as a main character was fine. Like, I didn't really have any strong feelings about her. But then like one of the other things, so besides the romance being like very underwhelming for me, which was a big disappointment, one of the other sort of big issues I had with this book is like the plot. Like, just I guess just in general, but especially the last chunk of this book, things start happening and things start being revealed, and it's supposed to be, I think, very dramatic and interesting and exciting, and I was just kind of like, what? Like, why is this the direction we went? I think if I were enjoying other parts of the book more, it wouldn't have felt so jarring to me. I gave Dreams Lie Beneath 3 stars. Gorgeous cover though, yes? Okay, and then in 4th place, I have The Lost Girl by Anne Ursu. So this is about 2 identical twin girls, Iris and Lark. And so they've always been in the same class. They've always done things together. Iris is the one who is more like outspoken, who always like looks out for her sister. Lark is the shyer one and kind of like dreamy, and they're like each other's best friends, and they do everything together. They look out for each other, and even though like outwardly it seems like Iris is the one who's always protecting Lark, Lark also balances out her sister really well. So they're just a perfect team, but their parents decide that it's going to be good for them to be split up for a while, which I always think in stories, it's like, it would be good for your kids to like spend time with other people, but like, why do you have to go about it in such a like traumatic way? But anyway, so they get split up, and Iris is really, really worried about Lark. She's afraid the other kids are going to bully her because she's very shy and quiet, and she doesn't usually stand up for herself, and she's just really afraid about what this means for her sister. But as the book goes on, Iris is the one who actually is having the hardest time, and Iris is actually the main character of this book, which is also super interesting. Like, she's the perspective character that we're following. And so the book really follows the two of them like really struggling to sort of have an identity separate from their sister while still obviously remaining very close. And yeah, I really ended up liking this one a lot. I think the first part of this book was like, it was hard because I had only read one other thing by Anne Arsu, and I absolutely loved it, and it had been a really long time since I read that book. So again, with the high expectations, and I did find part of the story itself kind of like frustrating or stressful, but I think that was intentional, and I think it was effective. And as I got farther into the story, I got so invested in Iris and in Lark, and I really like that Iris is the character that the story is about, because I feel like trends in publishing now, you're much more likely to follow the like dreamy, whimsical sister who's very quiet, you know, and like it's always about like the story's always about like her kind of self-actualization, which there's not anything wrong with that, but following Iris was very different. And I really like the themes of this book about how like, you know, everybody is strong and everybody needs help, and both of those things are true. And like the different kinds of strength. I loved the sister relationship. Like, sibling bonds just always get me. I thought the writing was wonderful. I also really liked the characterization of like the supporting cast. I just think was very, very good. Like, even Iris and Lark's parents, even though I had some issues with them, their mom especially, I think was very interesting, and I really loved some of the conversations they had. Iris ends up joining this like after school program because her parents make her sign up for an activity that is not with her sister, and I think it's like an art class or something like that, and seeing her make friends with the other girls, like just the female friendship in this book is wonderful. I also should mention that this is actually a fantasy book. It is mostly a contemporary, even though it is written in kind of a whimsical sort of fabulist style, but there is a magical element, but it is fairly subtle, and you don't know exactly what's going on with that until partway through, and that went in a direction I wasn't 100% expecting, and I thought that was super interesting. I thought the final sort of confrontation, or like the way that played out, was really well done, and again, I love what that did thematically. I love Anne Arsu's writing. It's whimsical without being overly flowery or like cutesy, or like over dramatic and self-serious. Like, I just think it is a really good balance, and so like I ended up really enjoying this one. I just think that this is just a really wonderful celebration of girls, and of sisters and of friends. So I gave it The Lost Girl 4 stars. Next up is This Is My America by Kim Johnson. This is another very gorgeous cover. Oh, I should mention the illustrator for The Lost Girl. Let's see. Erin McGuire. The illustrations were really beautiful, and I think really, really fit the tone of the story wonderfully. So anyway, This Is My America. This is a very heavy contemporary with a mystery element. So we're following our main character, Tracy Beaumont, who is 17 years old, and she is a young Black girl living in the US. So obviously just very difficult in general, and also her father has been on death row for a very long time, and she knows he's innocent. She knows that he didn't commit the crime that he was put away for, and she's been writing letters to Innocence X, which is a project that is kind of modeled on Bryan Stevenson's real-life project, and so she's been writing letters like about his case and submitting like requests for them to take his case, and they haven't done it, and his time is running out. Like her father's like last appeal fell through or something, and his execution date is approaching, and so she's obviously really scared and really like motivated to get her dad some help. And then her older brother ends up in a very similar situation where he is also arrested. There is a teenage white girl who is found killed, and of course they end up blaming her brother. And so we kind of see this cycle of incarceration start to continue because her brother is being blamed for it. He goes on the run, and once again Tracy knows that he didn't do it, but nobody's listening to her. And so it's a story about these two men in her family who are victims of this abusive system. So this is a mystery, but it is a mystery that has a lot of like discussions behind it, which I really like. I like when that is like part of what a mystery is doing. And I really like this one as well. I heard about this from Ashley at Bookish Realm, and I'm glad I finally read it because this was excellent. Like I said, I really liked the way that the mystery and the themes were woven together in this book. I thought the writing was excellent. I really felt for Tracy as a main character, and I think she was characterized so well. Like all of her like difficult things that have happened to her and her emotions and her determination in spite of all of that. There's some great friendships here. Like I really thought this was a fantastically done book. I do think that there were some aspects of the solution or the resolution that I think could have been built up more, especially like with some of the kind of character relationships. There was like one or two in particular where I don't think I was as convinced by some things as I should have been, but overall I thought this was fantastic. I'm definitely looking forward to anything that Kim Johnson comes out with in the future, and This Is My America got 4.5 stars. And then the last two, my top two, are sort of tied because these are the ones that I gave 5 stars. So both of them got 5 stars, and one of them is a fiction and one of them is nonfiction. So they feel like different enough that it feels weird to sort of rank them against each other. So this is American Prophets, The Religious Roots of Progressive Politics and the Ongoing Fight for the Soul of the Country by Jack Jenkins. So as I said, this is the nonfiction title on this list, and this is about exactly what the title and subtitle says. It's about religion and politics in the US, but specifically progressive and leftist politics, and how that connection is actually really deep and really important, and there's a lot of history behind it. But there is this kind of assumption, like for most people, if you think about like religion and politics in the US, you think of like alt-right, you know, which like for good reason, like they are a significant factor in politics, and this book doesn't undermine that. But I think what it does that is so important is it talks about how that is not even close to the whole story. And also that like the religious left is not only a thing, like it exists, but also it is a powerful movement and group in its own right. And just because it looks different and it doesn't vote as a block as consistently, those things don't mean that it doesn't matter or that it doesn't have an effect. And so as you can probably guess, this is like specifically about the US. So it doesn't cover other countries at all, so just know that. And I also would say that this is pretty like Christian denomination heavy. Jack Jenkins does talk about other religious practices and movements. Actually, one of my favorite chapters was the one on Indigenous spirituality and how that is so closely tied to environmental activism. So like he does cover other religious groups as well, but I think that a lot of this book is about like Christian religious politics, and specifically how there's actually a lot of like leftist Christian religious politics that does have an effect in the US. And I think that makes sense to an extent that he spent so much time on that, because one of the things this book does is like, you know, countering like stereotypes, and a lot of the stereotypes about religion and politics in the US are about Christianity. But I just wanted to like mention so that people know what the focus of the book is, but I thought this was so well done and so valuable and so interesting. Like some of these things I knew about, but a lot of them I didn't. I also want to say that I really benefited from doing the audio for this. The narrator is Kyle Tate, I think, and he did a really excellent job, because the first chapter or so of this book, like, it's not Jack Jenkins' fault, because like the information that he's having to like set up, like there's just a lot of like detail. There's a lot of different organizations and nonprofits and groups, and a lot of them have very similar names. So like I don't think it was poorly written at all, but it was just hard for me to to like follow. So listening to the audio really, really helped for me. So I would definitely recommend that if that's an option. But yeah, I learned so much from this. I found this very validating. I found it, again, just very interesting. And I also think that one of the strongest and most important things this book does is it really highlights so many different examples of people who are involved in progressive movements and politics and who are really passionate about causes, not in spite of their faith, but because of it. Like, these are directly tied to their beliefs and their religious worldview. And I think that that is a combination that, again, we don't necessarily think of in the US as often. Yeah, so I thought this was great. As I said, I gave it 5 stars. Just incredibly interesting and valuable. Oh, something else I wanted to mention, besides just like the content and everything, is I am really impressed at the way that Jack Jenkins sort of connected threads throughout this book. Like, each chapter is focused on a specific movement or group or topic or, you know, like section like that. But he also did a really excellent job of sort of connecting them narratively. One of the people that he's interviewing, for example, they'll mention like a protest or a movement that they were at or involved in, and then Jack Jenkins will, like, in the narration of the book, he'll talk about how like what that protest was like, how he went there to interview like activists and everything, and then like one of the people that was at that protest is like an important figure that he talks about later. So I just thought that was really impressive as well. And then finally, This Is How We Fly by Anna Mariano. I loved this, obviously. This is a very loose contemporary take on Cinderella. We're following our main character, Ellen, who is she's struggling in her relationship with her family, especially her stepmother and her dad. She also has a younger stepsister, and they get along really well, but there's just a lot of like tension in the family right now because Ellen and her stepmother just don't see eye to eye on a lot of things, and Ellen feels like her dad is not listening to her, to Ellen. Also, I want to mention that Ellen is kind of figuring out some stuff with gender, but she does use female pronouns throughout the book, so that is what I'm going to use for the review. Yeah, so she's just dealing with a lot. She also is really unhappy because she is graduating high school. She's like getting ready, it's like over the summer, and she's getting ready to go to college and everything, but her best friends from school are kind of acting like they want to move on from her, and that really hurts, obviously, and so there's like some friendship things going on as well. And then Ellen ends up getting dragged to a practice for the sport that is now called quad ball, and Ellen is like, this is ridiculous, I don't want to do this, leave me alone. But when she starts like participating more, she ends up really loving it, and really enjoying the sport and really loving the community. It's a super inclusive community and just very like warm and friendly and welcoming, and she ends up becoming really invested in this sport and in this group of friends that she makes, and it's just wonderful. I love Ellen as a character. I love how passionate she is about doing the right thing. I really loved like the friendships in this book. I thought the family relationships were incredibly complicated in ways that were not frustrating to read. Like, it was just very believably complex. And I really appreciated that. The little nods to Cinderella are super fun. Like, again, this is a very loose take on that story, but it's a lot of fun to find those little elements. There's a romance subplot that is not a huge part of the book, but I thought that was well done and I enjoyed it. I just really loved the like the quad ball element itself. Like, I am not a sports person and I'm not a like books about sports person, but this one really won me over. This is like a chunky book. Like, this is over like 400 pages, and I usually feel like that's too long for a contemporary, but I just love the way Anna Mariano writes, so I would like read basically any length of book from her. So it didn't feel long to me, but I know some people felt like it was too long. And I also want to say that I think the writing is really, really good for this book. Like, I was seeing people complain in reviews about how like how it's not very well written or the writing is really bland, and it's not. Like, it's not written like a fantasy book, but that doesn't mean the writing is bad or like too simplistic, you know? Like, I think there was a great amount of like humor. I think the character work was great. I thought the emotion was conveyed really well. Like, I thought the writing was really well done. So yeah, anyway, this is the other one that got 5 stars from me. Okay, so I'm going to try to go in the order of ranking. So starting off with Rebecca Ross, I obviously did not love her novel as much as I was hoping to, but I'm still pretty optimistic about her as an author for me, for a few reasons. For one thing, I think that having an author that I had built up for myself so much, I think that definitely may have affected my experience. And also the fact, I think I've mentioned this before, sometimes when it's a book I've been interested in for a long time, I, without realizing it, sort of like form ideas about what kind of story I think it's going to be that are not necessarily based on the actual like summary or reviews or anything. So that is also on me. And I also just think maybe I didn't pick a good book of hers to start with because I don't think, like, there were things about it that obviously didn't click with me. So bottom line for Rebecca Ross is I do still think I'm going to enjoy her books, and I'm maybe just going to try and go in actively trying not to know what to expect, if that makes sense. Then for Anne Ursu, I have really enjoyed books by her before, and actually since filming the TBR part, I have actually read and loved Not Quite a Ghost by her. It might be, like, it's a contender for my favorite novel by her, so I guess I'm sort of like incorporating information that I have after the fact. But basically, I continue to enjoy Anne Ursu, and she's a really interesting author for me because she's not, like, as you saw from my rating, she's not an automatic, like, oh, I know I'm going to give every book of hers 5 stars, basically, but I always really like her books, and sometimes I absolutely love her books. So I think that's kind of an interesting, like, she's a very dependable 4-star and up author for me, and that hasn't changed. Then, Kim Johnson, this was her debut novel, I believe. She was a new author to me, and I really, really liked it. I'm really actively looking forward to reading other things by her. I think at this point she might have had another novel come out, so I have to look into that. But yeah, she definitely, it seems like she's doing, at least based on this book, books that have a strong, like, mystery element, but that also deals with, like, history and social justice issues in a way that I really enjoy and that I find very interesting. Jack Jenkins, I think I probably mentioned this in the TBR video, but, like, I had read, like, online writing of his before, so I knew I liked his ideas and his journalism and everything, and I think that was confirmed by the fact that I really, really enjoyed and got a lot out of his nonfiction book. I absolutely will seek out anything else he writes in the future, especially if it is kind of in this topic, and I also think that depending on the sort of structure of the book, I might try and go for an audiobook again, because for me personally, I found that was a really good way to consume this one because of the first couple chapters being very, like, detail heavy in a way that was kind of hard for me to, like, get through or, like, put together, like, physically, by reading physically, I mean. So another gold star there. And then Anna Mariano, this just completely reaffirms how much I love her as an author. Like, the fact that I have loved her fantasy books and her contemporary books, like, I think that, like, if there was any doubt that Anna Mariano is one of my favorite authors, this experience really put that doubt to rest, because at least based on 2 genres, I'm going to enjoy her work in different kinds of stories. So I think this was a very successful experiment. I think I would give myself, like, a B. If we're using, like, the American letter grade system, I feel like I would give myself a B for this round because I did pretty well at picking books that I would really enjoy. We had 2 5 stars, 1 4.5, 1 4, and 1 3. So I feel like overall that's a pretty good record. I don't know when I'll do another round of these because it obviously takes me so long to actually read them. But yeah, comment down below, let me know what you think about any of these books, what you think about my conclusions. Thank you guys so much for watching. I will see you soon with another video, and I hope you love the next book you read. Bye!